I know it's a very difficult request, but kindly, I would humbly request everyone to put your phones on silent as we are going to begin with the event very shortly. My name is Sambhav, and I'm your co host for today. And I say co host because this event will be covered by myself and my co host, Miss Vidushi Tripathi, and we'll be covering the entire event in an alternating fashion. Today, we have gathered for the first FICL Corporate Lawyers Summit 2022. The theme of this summit is the new normal, challenges and opportunities for the corporate lawyers in the COVID era and the way forward. I would directly get to the inaugural session, and we will be beginning with the very beautiful lighting of the lamp ceremony along with the very beautiful Saraswati Vandana. I would humbly request the honorable guest panel to kindly initiate the lamping of the light ceremony. And a brief introduction. It will be initiated by the Honorable President of FICL, Dr. S.B. Mitra, President of Society of Indian Law Firm and Patron of FICL, Dr. Lalit Bhasin sir, former Law Secretary and Patron of FICL, Shri P.K. Malhotra sir, and Founder and CEO of FICL, Dr. Ashok Sharma sir. Dr. S.B. Mitra sir, kindly approach the That is indeed the best way to start any ceremony or any event. I would humbly request the panel to kindly approach the stage.
Good morning to all of you. Dr. Lalit Bhasin, President Society of Indian Law Firms. My very old friend, Shri P.K. Malhotra, former Law Secretary. Dr. S.B. Mitra, Honorable President FICL. Dr. Sharma, Founder and CEO FICL. And all distinguished delegates and supporting organizations and all dignitaries. Today, we are participating in the new normal challenges and opportunities for the corporate lawyers in the COVID era and way forward. Friends, for my some professional commitment, which came suddenly, I am unable to be with you physically, and therefore I am joining you virtually. I'm pleased to note that FICL, which is a non-profit organization with more than 1,200 members and having a global connectivity in 17 jurisdictions of the world, being a member of two global organizations, that is In-House Counsel Worldwide and Asia Pacific Corporate Counsel Alliance, is providing a national platform to the corporate lawyers for policy advocacy, enabling knowledge sharing amongst the Indian corporate legal community, and to promote professional recognition of corporate lawyers within the community, within India, and beyond India. Friends, as we all know, the changes to the legal ecosystem in India as well as across the world in past 2 years have been profoundly changing and has deeply impacted by ongoing COVID-19 pandemics. General counsels and in-house lawyers would need to adjust to the existing scenario and will have to introduce new measures to keep dealing with emerging situations when faced. COVID-19 pandemic and associated shift to a remote or hybrid work has greatly accelerated the need for legal technology with video conferencing, virtual conferences or hearings, electronic document sharing, and e-filing now becoming a new normal in this digital transformation, and this is here to stay, with in-house legal department requiring to plan and invest in the new legal technology solutions. It is very apt that in FICL's inaugural FICL First Corporate Lawyers Summit 2022, which took place on May 27, 22, which is to take place on 27 May 22, will focus on how general counsel can improve business value beyond just managing the risk, how they can lead with impact, and what should be on their agenda going forward. Today is the day. I am depriving myself of being personally present amongst you and to interact with all the dignitaries who are present. That's my loss. I wish the conference a great success and my best wishes and compliments to FICL for choosing a very, very relevant subject for this summit. Thank you so much and good day to all of you. Thank you.
Present here. We'll be beginning with the first session, and the topic of discussion for the first session is Are Indian General Counsels Future Ready? This topic has assumed greater relevance with the onset of COVID, where the role of general counsels became infinitely expandable. To begin the session, I would request Mr. Rajeev Chopra, Managing Director, Legal, Accenture, who leads a team that provides cross-domain expertise in various areas of law, to begin the session. I would also like to invite the speakers for the session, Ms. Prathiba Jain, Group General Counsel, Everstone Capital Advisors, Mr. Rajbeer Sachdeva, Group General Counsels, JK Organization, Mr. Gaurav Gupta, India Legal Counsel, Bentley Systems, and Ms. Niharika Shrivastava, Director Legal, EON. I would humbly request Rajeev sir to begin the session.
So thank you, and thank you to the esteemed guests who spoke before us, Dr. Bhasin, always very insightful views, Dr. Ashok Sharma, Mr. P.K. Malhotra, Mr. Mitra, thank you for setting the context for the day. And I'm privileged to host this session, which is very relevant, I think, so whether GCs are future ready. Now, before we do that, I mean, I want to go a little bit in the past. So I've been a legal professional for 30 years, 20 of which have been in-house. Now, when I go back in the history, 20 years back, I'm kind of thinking at that time, if the same question had been asked of me as to whether you're future ready, what would have been my answer? Unfortunately, I was a late bloomer, so in the 20-year past context, I have to say that I was just beginning to learn how to use a laptop, right? And from there on to 20 years now, when I have to know some technological advancements like bot, artificial intelligence, uh, tools to do various things that we do as general counsel. So I had to learn, and it was a steep learning curve for me as well. But to learn all this, when my starting point was beginning to just learn to type, right? So 20 years back to what we've gotten to today has also been a huge journey, right? So with that context, I want to just ask some questions to my panelists, beginning with Rajbeer yourself, if that's okay. So from the time you started as general counsel, and I have to say about Rajbeer, he is one of the stalwarts of in-house community. So when I was, manner of speech, growing up, Rajbeer was someone I was looking up to as someone I would like to become one day, like him, right? So Rajbeer, so you are, a pioneer of in-house counsel journey. So what is a big change in the profession approach to our roles that you've seen in your very sterling career?
Thank you, Rajeev. The role I can describe in two words, and I think in two lines. Initially, when he used to have an in-house counsel, I think the role was limited to a particular litigation or managing certain trademark issues. I think this was more of a legal advisor role, which I think transformed over a period of time to a general counsel role. If I see and look back 30 years, when people used to join in-house, I think it was limited to the litigation aspect, which was being seen as a predominant objective of a legal counsel, and possibly hiring the counsels, outside counsels, briefing them, preparing a brief, and then mostly spending time in the litigation side, on the litigation side. But over a period of time, that role evolved to a general counsel, where the lawyer, the in-house counsel started getting involved in the deal making, transactions, the acquisition process. So new role, I think it was, when we see over a period of time, it is a much larger role compared to when traditionally the lawyer, in-house lawyer, was only seen as a person who is responsible for making the litigations, or hiring or the filing the litigations, or defending the suits which have been filed against the company. So today, when I see as a GC, in the decision-making process, particularly when you see the compliance part, developing risk reporting mechanisms, then you also talk about acquisitions, mergers. Everywhere the general counsel himself is involved, and I think his decision and his views are taken predominantly by the business team, particularly CEOs, CFOs. They will first go to the GC and ask him what are the chances if we go for this acquisition, what are the nuances, how this will help us, what could be the legal risk. So over a period of time, today general counsel, I think, has become a very important integral part of the organization, which was not there when we initially have seen those lawyers working in the legal department. And legal department used to be department where only litigations were predominantly being seen, or somehow the IPR, trademark protection, was the only objective which I think the lawyer, the in-house lawyer, was responsible.
So thank you, Rajbeer. I know from I've seen my journey, and from just being seen as a lawyer, and someone who you had to somehow, the necessary evil to cross before you can get and do a business, to now having a seat on the executive boards of the company and with the expectation that you will not only contribute to the legal affairs, but also to the business or running a business, right? So I have seen that transformation. But, the same question to you, Niharika. You are one of the young and upcoming future stars of in-house fraternity. What have you seen in your journey so far? One thing which has shifted.
Hi, am I audible? Yes. So I graduated from Campus Law Center in 2000. So yeah, there's been a 22-year journey. And what I've seen, I started in a law firm. So the biggest change I see, I mean, if I talk about my experience as a starting lawyer, is I would do a lot of legal research. I would be doing the groundwork for due diligence, literally sleeping under the table at night and doing all-nighters. I would do your basic redlining of low complexity contracts. Those were my core tasks as a junior associate. And now when I look at it, it's all being done by bots. So now when I look at it, I mean, we don't even take freshers because we have bots doing those work for us. So that's the biggest change I've seen, that there are some roles that are disappearing because we have AI that's taken over. And I echo with Rajbeer sir here on the GC, because I felt I was getting burnt out in a law firm, so I moved to the corporate thinking, wow, it's a lovely role. The GC is the middleman between business and the law firms. I'm going to sit here. The business will say, this is my problem. I'll go to the law firm saying, solve this problem. And I'm just going to be the middleman. It's going to be a life, full of beds, bed of roses. And I was wrong, because by the time I joined the corporate sector as an in-house counsel, it was, I think my first role was in 2007. I realized that a general counsel is much more than just looking at litigation or IPR and liaisoning with law firms. We were expected to have a seat on the table, to be preemptive, not just come when there's a fire. We have to be there before even the fire is lit, right? We have to be proactive in our support. We have to look at emerging risks. We also had to be businessmen. We had to look at financing and budgeting. Our legal operations came into play. Suddenly we're looking at being a financial manager, looking at budgets for the team, looking at operating costs, looking at the hiring and retaining people because that's hard, building up the team. So there's so much more now in this role. So it's like we have to think of ourselves now as many skilled lawyers than just focusing on any area, like a SME, like they say, subject matter expertise, like you're an IPR lawyer or you are a litigation lawyer. But now I think we have to be someone who's a businessman, someone who's a people manager, someone who's good with technology, good with financial acumen, understanding the business, commercial awareness. I mean, a lot of things. So that's a big change. So I guess I joined the GC too late.
No, this is such a, you both fantastic views, but such a contrast to someone who's started the journey a few years later than some of us have. So, the quality of your response tells me that, you're already sort of thinking about things which when we started off, were pretty, we were behind times at that time, right? But, one thing which you said, which resonated with me is, I sort of jumped from private practice to in-house, and obviously my mindset was just being a lawyer. But then I quickly realized that you are also expected to be a leader, a people manager. Some of the points that you made, and suddenly you realize that you're no more just a lawyer. People are looking up to you as a senior business executive of that company, right? So that learning curve was also huge for me. So thank you for your views, Rajbeer and Niharika. I'll come back to you, but my next question, Prathiba, is to you. What is one skill that you'll teach yourself to be relevant, let's say 5 or 10 years from now?
Thank you. Pleasure to be here physically. Feeling a little odd in all those lights, sitting in an actual chair and not in my jeans virtually. Before I kick off, if I, since diversity is one of the themes for today, Mr. Bhasin thanked all the women who are multitasking. I want to add to that, for the working couples like me, and I'm sure, all of the women here, it's the partnership that is very critical. You know, recognizing it's not just the woman's burden to bear, the multitasking, but I've seen with my generation, with my own husband and a lot of friends. Right now, my husband is at home, you know, babysitting not only the kids but a dog that I was babysitting for my niece while working. So it's not possible till there's a recognition by society and by the men in the profession and the spouses that it can't be just borne by women. We'll tire out, and that's why you see as we become senior, women leaving the profession. So you know, shout out to all the men and the change in society and the regulations which recognize paternity leave, etc. That you know there needs to be a balance and the burden needs to move equally. On that digression, sorry, to answer your question, I think for me the most important thing in my career has been agility. I started off in private practice. I started off outside India. After a decade, moved back to India as general counsel for Goldman Sachs in Mumbai. Then had to move to Delhi after a while for private reasons. Went back to private practice in Delhi, which is not a financial markets hub at all. And now back for the last 1 year as a GC. And the one thing that's held me steady is learning how to adapt yourself and learn new skills. You know, that'll help you with technology, that'll help you with change in industry, which I've done multiple times. And just, you know, learning the skills as they come, not closing your mind saying, I've become very senior, so I'm going to do this role. You know, even today, if somebody asks me to do an NDA or an employment agreement, I'll happily do it, because guess what? I'll bring a new aspect, you know, with my experience to it. And I pick up issues that probably a junior wouldn't have picked up, and that'll be helpful for the organization as a whole. So just keeping yourself nimble and relevant. Very early in my career, you know, I was at a point where I said, I know it all now. I was probably like 4-5 years into practice. And now I look back and say, you know, that was very wishful thinking, and there's every day so much new to learn. And we just finished, we are in the comm cycle right now. Yesterday, the HR remarked that your team has the highest salaries among all the service providers in the organization. And that's just a testament to, you know, this community. Lawyers are nimble. My team at Everstone is very nimble, and that's why they have a seat at the table, and that's why they get paid what they paid today. So
Thank you, Prathiba. First of all, your comments about diversity are always welcome. I think it's a very important issue. So thank you for your insights on that. And of course, agility, staying nimble, etc. I think we need to keep unlearning and learning every day. Gaurav, any perspective on the same question? What is that skill that you want to teach yourself to stay relevant 5-10 years from now?
Yeah, thanks, Rajeev. So I think as Prathiba has already given the context, I think one skill which I think we need to have, it's similar to what Prathiba said, but I think it is in addition to agility, it has to be adaptability. Adaptability to new situations, to new things which will be thrown to you as a lawyer. I mean, for all of us, we know that the COVID-19 pandemic came to us as a shock, and we were kind of used to working in a certain environment with certain set of rules and within a comfort zone. And how overnight pandemic changed that all, and suddenly we were no longer working in our offices, but we were kind of in a room with our family, trying to figure out how to run a team, how to get the workflow done, how to keep the fellow colleagues, encouraged, and things like that. So I think that all took some time for us to figure out, but we were able to eventually figure it out, and we were able to do things, under the restrictive circumstances which we had. I mean, I had kind of closed one M&A transaction during the I think we all did, right? So we all did close these M&A transactions, and even though it was a much more cumbersome process to do in terms of, you obviously you cannot be physically present. I mean, even signing of an execution was such a tedious process. You had to kind of figure out and do timings how to, sign one thing or the other. But at end of the day, it did teach us a lot of things, and I think it kind of added to our experience. So I think that is something which will keep on coming going forward with the changing work environment, with changing circumstances, with agents, with companies thinking differently, with employees thinking differently, and with team members also, kind of having a different perspective. So one would need to change your mindset. That also probably includes what I would call as having a digital literacy, where you should be open to adopting new platforms of technology, whether it's managing your team, or whether it's managing your workflow. So as long as you're able to do that, I think in addition to that, one also needs to take into consideration that to what extent can we identify as a GC risks or a matter which might need deliberation at a much earlier stage. I mean, for example, in terms of any laws or any measures which the governments might be coming up, to what extent we are able to adapt our to the changing legal environment, equip the law departments with the right resources at the right point of time. I think once we have that vision to foresee all these things and then adapt it to the current scenario, I think that's going to help us a lot as an organization. Thanks.
Thanks, Gaurav. So I'm, obviously fortunate to work in a technology company, and what we have going as training program for all across Accenture. Each employee has to do what is called the technology quotient, and there are, I think, 10 odd modules that one has to go through just to stay relevant, and one is expected to reach a certain level of proficiency in technology quotient. And there are some, so for example, till May I have to complete 7 modules out of the 10. And last module that I did day before yesterday, early morning, was metaverse. And I'm kind of, sitting back and looking at, how that will transform some of the things we do. In fact, speaking for Accenture, our new joiner trainings have already begun in metaverse, right? And I was kind of looking at, if I have to stay relevant for another 5-10 years, I think it's good for me because my company is investing in that training. But even otherwise, as a professional, I have to know all these things, right? Metaverse, data, blockchain. I think these are getting integrated into our day-to-day work as well. So thank you, Gaurav, for your views. Rajbeer, crystal grazing, 20 years hence. Yeah. So 20 years hence, what is that skill you see every in-house counsel will need to have, which maybe none of us have today? What is that skill that you think will be very relevant?
All eminent personalities are here, and you are one of them, Rajeev. These questions keep coming up.
Mike.
These questions keep coming up every 20 years or 10 years. The rhythm remains the same. I think I'll read out two the principles which I think HR keeps telling me, and they have been telling me, not in one organization, many of those organizations. First, and I'm reading it out. I have not something which I've done it on my own. First, predicating or identifying a problem. This is the GC role when they are collaborating and working closely with the business team. Second, proactively anticipating legal regulatory risk. Now, I don't know, many of us are sitting here. What does it mean in practical aspect? This is a statement I have just copied, put it down in my notes, and I'm repeating it. When you translate it into a practical situation, and I'll say when GCs collaborate with the business teams to accomplish some acquisitions, mergers, sometimes the task is given to you, look, this company we need to acquire because this has strength A, this has strength B, and therefore, come what may, whether your due diligence gives you negative results or whatever, you will have to go for the acquisition. Now, I have seen in my experience when you start doing a due diligence of a company, you come out with many issues, particularly tax liabilities are there. There are other regulatory issues, and you end up, at a place where you say, "Look, this company can't be acquired." But your CEO or CFO will say, "Look, while your assessment is that the company is not having some inherent problems, you can't go for acquisition, but give us a solution." So, what is the solution? Solution could be either you go for an acquisition of the asset, which is asset purchase agreement through asset purchase. If IP is the predominant objective, then you go for acquisition of the IPs, be it patents, trademarks, or copyrights, because that will add value. But at the end of the day, you are solving the problem, or in fact collaborating with the business team to achieve that objective, which is the acquisition. You may not be acquiring the company per se, but you are acquiring the business, or you are acquiring the IPs. At least that objective is being met. So when we see this, I think whether you are today going through the technology route, or you are working on a silo basis, GC's role is to take active part in those commercial decision making processes, and he should be able to take a decision from legal perspective in compliance with the regulatory framework. I think that is the broad statement. We can discuss on the nuances of, and Mr. Bhasin sir is here. I have in fact been part of many of those discussions with Mr. Bhasin on many other forums. There are technology has its plus and its minus, and we have seen when hybrid hearing goes on, the impact you create when it's a physical hearing before the benches and judges, it's much more compared to when we see a virtual hearing. While virtual hearing, the mode is coming up, we have also done the hearings, but I think I have my own views, particularly when in a trial or a cross examination. You go for the virtual hearings, I think things are not going to be in your favor if you are being cross examined, or you are cross examining a witness. So that being the case, I think technology will take time to develop those skill sets. When you say technology in particularly legal arena will be similar to when we have seen those physical hearings happening before the high courts or Supreme Courts or any other forums. And most of the hearings I have seen last 2 years or 2.5 years during the pandemic time, those were the longish matters, or the bulky matters were getting adjourned because the bench did not have the time to go through all that stuff on the online process.
Thank you, Rajbeer. And I was sort of reflecting on this question, and as you were speaking, I was kind of thinking maybe we'll have robots in our teams, and I maybe we'll have to learn how to manage robots, and I don't know what that'll look like. So whether they will have emotions, whether they will have aspirations like humans have, and I can see 20 years hence there will be robots roaming around in the offices, and there will be robots working for us. So I was kind of looking.
One question with the permission of the chair. See, the young lawyers who are coming out of the law school, possibly even last 3 years, they graduated and they passed out from the law school, and I have encountered those issues with them. Possibly when I met them, he said, "We don't know what is a court craft, and when we are going into the litigation, we don't know how the matter is addressed or argument is put forth. We have only been part of the virtual hearings." I think that's something which needs to be looked upon, not that we only go on a virtual hearing and we should dispense with the physical hearing. I think that should not be the norm. That's my view, maybe a traditional view, which I still continue to maintain. While virtual hearings are there, but at times the training is also important for the young lawyers. And when we are training them, the young lawyers should be a part of those physical hearing processes if they are actively participating in the litigations.
Gaurav, quick reaction. 20 years on, what is that one skill that you think in-house counsel have, which we don't know exists today?
I think, Rajiv, 20 years, in my view, is a very long period of time. I think we should be looking at a horizon of next 5 to 10 years. Again, I'm going to kind of switch my focus on how we changed, what changed us in COVID. So I think what COVID did us was, at an organizational level or even at a legal department level, there was some sort of hesitation in adopting the technology. uh, what COVID did was it kind of removed that hesitation, and now we even see judges, senior advocates, senior people who probably had not much of an idea of using technology. They kind of, sitting in the video conferences and kind of using the technology to their own advantage. And to me, I think that's a major paradigm shift. Within the fraternity and within the legal department. Also, it's not that we don't have technology right now. We have technology in the legal department to do a lot of things. Say, for example, in Bentley, we have certain tools where the legal SharePoint site requests are registered. All the documents are kind of in one platform. Then we have these existing platforms to manage the compliance and all those things, export control regulations in the US. So all those technologies are there. And also we have technologies which are being used by other departments, for their own improvement of process and cost efficiency. What I foresee in immediate, maybe next 5 to 10 future years in the future is that how these existing platforms start talking to each other by way of using the artificial intelligence, and how an organization as a whole will benefit from these technologies, and that these technologies are not just used in silos. uh, Another example I can give is basically contract negotiation processes. So I foresee, and I think it has already happened in to some extent, that a lot of these organizations might empower the other departments to manage some of the contractual negotiation work, which is pretty much standard in terms of negotiations. But there would be bots to respond to the future frequently asked questions as to how particular issue can be resolved. So to that extent, I think we will see some transformations. And it all depends on how quickly an organization is willing to adapt to these changing situations. I mean, in US, uh, I mean, there was some study by Deloitte which said that I think 80% of the organizations were not ready for adoption of technology pre-COVID, and I think that has kind of changed going forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Gaurav. I'm also kind of conscious of our time. So, quick reactions. I know, Rajbeer, you alluded to that in your previous answer. Um, Virtual work environment. Is this profession and our roles ready for that? Quick reactions, starting with you, Niharika.
A quick answer would be a yes. COVID has taught us that we don't have to come to office to work. We can work from anywhere. But we also have to be mindful that uh, we are humans. We do need that personal connection. And if we have to cut it down to why do we now need to come to office, I can quickly think it would be for collaboration. It would be to celebrate those connections and that relationships we have, and maybe for coaching and training. But basically that human connection. That's the only reason we would want to continue to, come to office, but maybe in a more flexible hybrid way. But yes, we can, work in a virtual environment as well. COVID has taught us that.
Prathiba?
So I believe I've been virtual for about 20 years now. I've always worked in satellite offices across the world. So the main office was always, in New York. And to that extent, you're the only lawyer sitting among business guys, or you're part of a small team. You're pretty much working remotely. It's a mindset thing. Even while I was at NDA, I started the Delhi office. So when I started, it was just me, and then build the team. And right now, also, my legal team is across the country. There's literally one person sitting with me. So for me, this happened pre-COVID. and has worked really well for me. And I think it's really good for diversity too, because you've got to adapt to various people's needs. As long as you know they're talented, and you were alluding it to it before when we were discussing, you identify talent, and as long as you believe they can deliver, you build your ecosystem around that.
Gaurav, your views on the same point, but quick reaction.
Yeah, I think in my view, virtual is there to stay, and we have. I think everybody has in last 2.5 years realized the advantages of going virtual. Having said that, I mean, in Bentley, we kind of having this really flexible approach in terms of how the colleagues, can, as as my fellow panelists said, how the colleagues are using. We have this concept of uh, the management is kind of having this concept of smart offices, where we are kind of doing away with the traditional leasing and going towards a smart office space where you have small offices. Everything is managed, so we're not investing much in the management of the offices, but again, people are coming to offices for the team meetings, for social interactions, so that obviously there is a connect which still remains within the organization to be able to come and meet physically. So even for my team, we try to make sure that at least we meet once or twice in a month, have that physical interaction, face to face interaction, see what the issues are and see how we can resolve it. So I think it is there to stay, but I think it has advantages, but I think how things evolve in next 3 to 4 years is going to shape up the future, in my view.
So, the other day I was invited to speak to school students, and these are from one of the premier schools of Delhi. And, I was amazed at the quality of questions, but one of the questions was, so, I mean, in the context of where you've reached in your journey, what is it that has contributed to your, success? So to that, my answer was one, right? That I had the privilege in my formative years of the profession to be in courts, and my answer response was sometimes as Arjuna and sometimes like Eklavya. I was looking at these lawyers arguing in courts: Arun Jaitley, Kapil Sibal, P. Chidambaram, Dr. Bhasin, so on, and that learning by simply watching them and hearing their articulation of law, I think is sort of taught me a lot of fundamentals which are ingrained and inherent in me now. And I would implore, all the sort of young colleagues here sitting around the tables that even in virtual environments, make sure that you're sort of sparing time for some physical connect, meaningful connect. Yes, Niharika is for maybe celebrating, but also to learn, because looking up to someone is also a huge learning sometimes, right? Last comment, Rajbeer, on the same line. I know you've spoken your mind about this already, but any addition to that, or should we go to the next question?
Not averse to the virtual mode of hearings or virtual mode of negotiations. When it comes to a contract negotiation, yes, virtual meetings, we see Zoom meetings, all that has helped. My, I think, focus was more on the litigation side when you, particularly a lawyer, a young lawyer, or in-house team member who is purely involved in the litigation processes. I think the virtual hearings, when you are talking about the final hearing matters or a longish matters, I don't think virtual hearing is a substitute. And particularly when I say, and again I refer to Mr. Bhasin sir, on the criminal trials. A criminal trial, can it be done on a virtual hearing when accused is there and a lot of evidence is being pressed against him, or there's a cross-examination which is required to be done? Can that trial be completed by a virtual hearing process is the question mark. So I think I am not averse, as I said. Most of the transactions I have also done in the past 2.5 years, 3 years, learning the nuances of the virtual hearings and virtual meetings, and we have concluded many of those transactions through the virtual mode. But on the litigation side, I think I have my own views. that process, unless you have those physical hearings, you can't create an impact on the judges. And we are now witnessing, when you go and present your case before a bench and in a physical mode, it has much more, receptive way of, looking at the things. Even judges are also open minded, and they start looking at you and pass an order which is a more balanced order compared to when we have seen in the virtual hearings. Something.
So, yes, sir. Okay, okay. Sir, I have a last question for Prathiba and Niharika. So we're talking about whether GCs are future ready, right? So in terms of our education system, is it keeping pace with the requirements of future? Or do we need to make some substantial changes to how we sort of teach and what we teach?
So I firmly believe that law schools can't train you for specific jobs. As long as law schools are teaching them how to write well, how to read and be analytical in their thinking and know basic laws, and then you find somebody who's hardworking and can put their head down. Rest of the training is our job. That's why we still exist. So I'm just happy with that.
So I echo what Prathiba is saying. Law schools just teach us about what laws are there and what are the procedures, but the real learning actually comes through experience. And likewise, I say that if you have a analytical thinking mindset, your oral and verbal communications are good, and your research skills are good, and you have that open mind to learning. Because as Gaurav mentioned, and as the last question, Rajeev, things are changing. 20 years from now, we don't know what will be there. Whatever was here, the laws come, laws go. Technology becomes redundant in like every couple of years. But what will hold us in good stead are the skills, as Prathiba mentioned. But one thing as lawyers, because I know as lawyers we are like or at least I used to be allergic to technology. The one thing we have to change is our mindset, and we have to embrace technology to equip and enable ourselves, and also to give that support to our business, especially if you're in the information sector, because to give that sound legal advice, we need to know what is machine learning. We do need to know what is AI, non-fungible tokens, because that's the businesses our companies are getting into. And unless we know that, we will not be able to help them.
Thank you, Niharika. I think from my perspective, what I'm looking at is, I think, even though not as a major, but as a minor subject, I think teaching technology to students so that they have a better appreciation and trends that are evolving, I think is important as well. And I hear you that it's all about teaching analytic skills and maturing yourself into a good sort of individual, and then learn the trade as on your feet. I get that point, but I think a little tweak is necessary so that relevant skills are also taught. Gaurav, one last quick comment, and then we open the floor for a couple of questions.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the curriculum, education curriculum, I think the current curriculum in any event gives exposure to the kids to have exposure in all areas of laws, whether it's corporate, commercial, litigation, in-house. But I got an opportunity of visiting one of the top universities, in around Delhi only, and I was really amazed by the kind of technology they were using. I kind of came to know after I went there that I was actually interacting with a first year student and not a professor. The kind of interactions, the kind of communications, emails they were writing. I think, in my view, as everybody said, you can learn law in the universities, in the colleges. What I think the universities could do is encourage the authorities to invite the general counsels to the university, so that at least they can experience their soft skills with the students, in soft skills of communication, soft skills of understanding what the business needs are, how you can articulate your concerns to the organizations, because that is something which you will learn over a period of time, and maybe this is something which you can teach and give you the experience on, but that's not something the students will learn unless they start working.
Dr. Bhasin, sir, comments, please.
Very absorbing and interesting discussion, and I'm tempted to intervene here. Sitting in this environment of Taj Palace, we can see the use of technology that the Solicitor General could participate when sitting in his office. Can that be said about the courts also? And I fully agree with what Mr. Rajbeer Singh Sachdeva has said. And what possibly did not find mention in your observation, Mr. Sachdeva, is that we have been talking about litigation in the Supreme Court, High Courts and all that. 95% of litigation is in the district courts, spread all over the country, where the common citizens are involved. Do they have that use of technology, the benefit of that technology, which is available in our highest court? And that also sometimes does not work. And in the high courts, where now we have the hybrid system, one person can speak physically, other person speaking virtually. You can't hear what you see the other lawyer is saying that. So there can never be a substitute so far as the court proceedings are concerned, and those proceedings which are in the district courts, where out of these 4.5 crore cases, you see nearly more than 4 crore cases are pending there. So when Mr. Rajeev Chopra said 20 years hence, I think 20 years hence also the position will be the same so far India is concerned. I'm not talking about what happens in New York or other places advanced, because they are all advanced, even the districts are all advanced. They have the use of technology. But here, even our lawyers who are practicing in the district court, sometimes they do not have email IDs with them, who are in remote corners of the country. Therefore, to talk of the use of technology, I think we are only talking of the elite group, that is the Supreme Court practicing lawyers, High Court practicing lawyers. We are not talking about the citizens of this country, 1.3 billion, I don't know how much. They don't get the benefit of technology. Therefore, one has to live with this, and that is a good practice to live with it. Mr. Sachdeva is absolutely correct. Till we change the system of our jurisprudence, till we have this adversarial system of administration of justice, I think you need physical hearings, whether it is criminal cases or even in the civil cases. So you can't have a substitute for that. And one more comment about the role of the General Counsel. This is my 60th year in the profession. I started my law practice in 1962. I have seen, you see, how this profession has evolved. When I started my practice, there were no general counsel or in-house counsel. At the most, there were some non-legal legal assistants who used to help the external counsel in fighting out, you see, the cases or getting some agreements drafted and all that. Gradually it changed to in mid-90s, when the economy opened up. Multinational companies came in. Indian business grew. So there was a need, you see, to have some readily available legal advice which possibly external counsel could not provide at that point of time. So it was a need felt introduction of general counsel and in-house counsel by the business houses. That is how this thing came in. And now over a period now, about 20 to 30 years now, the role of the General Counsel has become very important, very significant. But they have to do a balancing act because they are, after all, an employee. The employer is the overall board of directors. If the board of directors takes a decision that I will not allow anyone who is not vaccinated to come to my office, so that is the decision of the board. What is the role of the General Counsel? How can he make the board comply, you see, with the direction of the Honorable Supreme Court, which says you right to, no one can compel anyone to get vaccinated. That is the law laid down. So that balancing act has to be done. Either you try to find a way out or you assert yourself that no, you can't do it. This is the law of the land. You can't go against that. Similarly, during COVID, okay, employees who are not reporting for duty, they will not be paid their wages. Now, that is obviously against law because the employee is willing to come. You are not allowing him to come. So why he should not be paid? What should be the advice given? So this is a very tricky period at time, you see, and the strategies have to be evolved to satisfy the board also, and at the same time meet the requirements of law. You can never compromise your position as a lawyer, you see, by compromising or diluting the effect of law. Yes, try to find practical ways. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, as always, for your comments. And you're always very direct and straight on all the points. So thank you for that. Any final comments, questions? Excuse me. Excuse me.
Hello, good morning. My name is Ishan Shukla. I belong to the legal team of Indian Oil Corporation. So this session being on being future ready, I just wanted to ask you that what is your take on the technological disruptions which may aid the legal profession as far as in the areas of litigation management, legal and regulatory compliances, and the possible role which artificial intelligence can play in the betterment of the legal profession, and also in the aid of the general counsels or in-house counsels of both PSUs and private sector. Thank you, sir.
So I think I'll take a quick 30 seconds and then I pass on for other comments. But I think bot and artificial intelligence is already in play, right? In my company, we are using that to educate people on the code of business ethics. So there's a tool you're speaking to, not a person, but a bot. And that bot is getting mature as more questions are put to the bot every day. And the intent was that, for tricky topics like ethics, if employees can speak to a bot rather than a human, they'll be more comfortable asking, questions much might perceive as silly. Coming to litigation management or compliance, etc., all of us, I think, around this room, none of us is still manually managing it. It's all tools, either off the shelf or we've evolved depending on our information security needs, etc. So a lot of us, it is in play. I know a lot of law firms are using robots for research, and I made a mention that 20 years hence there will be robots in our teams. I am pretty sure of that. So it is all already happening. I think it's just a question of how you adapt for future. Metaverse is another area which is already seeing the light of the day. It's only going to get better. Comments?
So, as a group general counsel of various companies, it's also helped me to centralize the function. So, earlier you needed a senior compliance officer in each company. Now with technology, so we have, these compliance, automated compliance manuals that we've created specifically for our group. And then you just roll it out in each of the company. Then you're not that dependent on individual people than enforcing that. And that's really helped me ensure that, there is uniformity across the group, and less dependence on people makes my job easier.
Maybe I am on Rajeev, I am on a dissenting note. Maybe if you permit me, artificial intelligence is important, but when you take a strategic decision, artificial intelligence will not be able to help you. And I'll give an example. And Mr. Bhasin again, about some time back, when investor used to come in India, they used to sign a contract where assured return was something. Suppose they make an exit after 3 years, Rajeev, they will ask for an assured return. Now, this was something which came up in many joint ventures, many shareholders agreement where investors said, I have made an investment, and after 3 years or 4 years, when I'm making an exit, I must get an assured return. This was something where I personally have sat through on certain aspects where we renegotiated certain joint venture agreements on the premise that RBI guidelines, they do not permit any assured return, because ultimately assured return means you are violating the RBI norms. And that being the law, we negotiated in those days when foreign investor came and they said, look, this was so many $1 billion were to be given to us as an exit price. We said, come what may, we can't give it to you. You can take it on the market value, do a fair market value and take the valuation. And whatever the valuation number comes, you take the exit price on that basis. And on that basis, we negotiated joint venture agreements across the Indian jurisdictions. But then law came. Now, I am only talking about artificial intelligence. The law came later on that, look, the agreement was signed, and agreements were signed by the Indian companies. Therefore, while it could be a violation of the RBI norms, but Delhi High Court came out in cruise judgment, and that was Unitech, where they said it could be a breach of contract, and therefore claim of damages can be filed against the company, because investor came on the assurance that he will get some assured return after exit, after he makes an exit. So if you talk about the artificial intelligence, there it was more of a strategic decision to grab an opportunity, talk about something, but artificial intelligence itself will not replace certain strategic decisions. That is what I think I have been practicing. Law of the land is there, but how do you interpret, how do you apply, and to how to wriggle out? So as a general counsel, you also have a responsibility to protect the interest of your company in whichever manner you can do that. I think that is what I think is the norm which I think I have been following it up.
Hey, hi, I'll take only 2 minutes. I have a very huge respect to this panel. Thank you so much for guiding us. My name is DK Gupta. I work for Vodafone. My journey is actually typical because I was in MRTP Commission and then with the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, and then I'm working with Vodafone. So very quickly, I want to make a point that the cyber security is the burning question for the future ready councils, which this is my personal study into the company. And it is actually boiling down to the reputation, which is now coming on the heads of the general councils. So this is my suggestion to everyone, nimble suggestion, that the councils are now to be ready to face the reputation related questions of the company, specifically for the cyber security related issues, which I'm connecting the dots with the artificial intelligence adoption and everything. So this is only a very brief submission.
Thank you so much. And with that, we conclude our session. I wish we had more time, but some of us will be around, so happy to take offline questions as well. Thank you so much. Stepping in.
Thank you.